Hello, and welcome back to our Bible study today. I'm the Reverend David Matthews, and with me is the Reverend Nancy Springer from Texas. And we're very glad to be able to continue on our Bible study in the book of Isaiah. Today we come to chapter 32, and so why don't we jump in and get started?
All right. I just want to say too, David, we have all our seminary classmates with us today too in the picture behind my desk.
Yes, we do. Hello.
Anyway, all right. We continue our conversation with Isaiah chapter 32. See here, a king rules to promote righteousness. Rulers govern to promote justice, each like a shelter from the wind and a refuge from a storm, like streams of water in a wasteland, like the shade of a massive cliff in a worn-out land. Then the eyes of those who can see will no longer be blind, the ears of those who can hear will listen. The minds of the rash will know and comprehend. The tongues of those who stammer will speak fluently and plainly. Then the fool will no longer be called honorable, nor a villain considered respectable. Fools speak folly, their minds devise wickedness, acting irreverently, speaking falsely of the Lord, leaving the hungry empty and depriving the thirsty of drink. As for the villain, his villainies are evil. He plans schemes to destroy the poor with lying words, even when the needy speak justly. But an honorable person plans honorable things and stands up for what is honorable.
Women of leisure, stand up. Hear my voice. Carefree daughters, listen to my word. In a little over a year, the carefree will shudder because the grape harvest will fail. The vintage won't arrive. Tremble, all of you who are at ease. Shudder, all of you who are secure. Strip yourselves, bare your skin, and tie mourning clothes around your waist, beating your breasts for the pleasant fields, for the fruitful vine, for my people's soil growing barbs and thorns, for all the joyful houses in the jubilant town. The palace will be deserted, the crowded city abandoned. Stronghold and watchtower will become empty fields forever, suited for the pleasure of wild donkeys and a pasture for flocks, until a spirit from on high is poured out on us, and the desert turns into farmland, and the farmland is considered a forest. Then justice will reside in wild lands, and righteousness will abide in farmlands. The fruit of righteousness will be peace, and the outcome of righteousness, calm and security forever. Then my people will live in a peaceful dwelling, in secure homes, in carefree resting places. Even in the forest falls, and the humbled city is laid low. Those who sow beside any stream will be happy, sending out ox and donkey to graze. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Okay, Nancy, well, can you give us some context? What's going on here? What will people hear this and think about? What will they already know going into this?
Well, the one thing, context-wise, I want to, or well, two things from in the beginning and then at the middle, right? So the very beginning of this chapter, it says, "See here, and a king rules." So these even today, right, are the ideal ruler. However, that ruler is put in power and those characteristics, and so we set that right up from the beginning. And then as we continue in the chapter, just one thing to set up, beginning in verse 9, where he talks about women of leisure and all these activities, right? Strip yourselves, tie mourning clothes, beating your breasts, right? Those were all physical expressions of grief, of lament. And these emotional expressions, these outward public on behalf of the whole community expressions of grief and lament were considered the women's role in the community. So it is, that's what he's setting them up for. He's like, the community is just going to need to grieve because everything's going to be lost. And so they need to quit being lazy and do their role as the community lamentors.
So it's not letting the men off the hook here. It's just highlighting the role of the in the community of the women.
Right, exactly. The men would have their own things to be doing, in this same thing. And that's, as you pointed out earlier, right? That's the men were the doers and the women are the feelers, right? So the women express the emotion of the community and the men work to do the work of the community. So yeah, he's not letting anybody off the hook here.
Okay. Well, Nancy, what is it about this chapter that stands out to you? What is this about?
I think for me, what I hear as a New Testament Christian looking backwards on this, right, and through the Jesus lens, um, is I see the kingdom of God as Jesus proclaims it to us, right? There's righteousness and justice and a refuge and the living water. Right? So it's all these things that Jesus proclaims God's kingdom is about, and saying this has been fulfilled. Jesus often asks, saying, this is for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. Right? So the kingdom is available to everyone, but you got to be willing to see it and hear it. And in verse 3, the prophet Isaiah said, the eyes of those who can see will no longer be blind, and the ears who can hear will listen. So everyone will have ears to hear and eyes to see the righteousness and justice of God as the ruler of all, the righteous kingdom. And so it's, as he goes through in verses 14 and 15, right, the world's just turned upside down. Cities are abandoned, palaces are deserted, all these things are no more. And that's, Jesus just saying this is the implementation of the new kingdom, the kingdom of the new world.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. What is there as a Christian that we can take from this today? Something that might either impact our lives personally, or something that in our Christian walk, our relationship with God, that might be there for us, encourage us?
I think, even though it doesn't sound like it at first, I really love what verses 5, 6, 7, and 8 have to say to who we are as Jesus followers today, right? There's, through the internet, including us, right? We get to be on the internet and make these videos and proclaim what we see as truth, except we're right, aren't we, David? Right?
That reminds me of the old meme where the guy is talking and showing all the different branches of Christianity, and it's like this massive web, and then he circles one down in the bottom corner and says, and here's where we got it right. Yeah,
you came along, got it all right. Yeah, I still laughed at when I put that up on the chapel bulletin board at Wycliffe. Somebody took it down. Anyway, but this is kind of our test, right? How can we decide? How can we know if what we're listening to is foolhardy or the truth? And it just says, right, the fools are going to leave the hungry empty, and no one's thirst is going to be satisfied by what they have to offer. Right? The villainies, right? They will destroy the poor with lying. Right? And so you can't speak the truth of Jesus and not feed the hungry and care for the poor and help those who need help. Right? Those two things are just, you just can't. So I think this is a great way to remind ourselves that even though someone may be claiming in the name of God they're doing something, if they are destroying the poor, if they are not feeding the hungry, then they are not seeking justice and doing righteousness in God's name.
Yeah, and that sounds a lot like what we've been talking about in some previous chapters as well. Jesus is the way, we are reminded. And so that sense of Jesus being the way, that means we walk in that way if he is Lord of our lives. And you can't claim that he is the way to God and then assume you're getting to God by some other means or some other path. That's not how it works. And so if we are Christians, we have to walk in that way. and we'll know we are Christians by our love. Like that's the old song,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's and obviously it finds its root in the Gospel of John. So that sense of, again, we are Christians, declared we are, it is declared we are Christians by our action, by the evidence of us walking in the way of Jesus.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big connection here between this chapter and previous ones. And yeah, just to see that evidence again, or a reminder of our Christian responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, Nancy, is there
Definitely.
anything that you also want to highlight? Anything we might have skimmed over or missed so far?
The only other thing that I noted is just the kind of the poetic beauty of this chapter, right? So the first two verses, a king rules to promote justice, rulers govern to promote righteousness, rulers govern to promote justice, each like a shelter. Right? And then at the very end, um, we are as we are throughout the prophecy of Isaiah, right? Justice will reside, righteousness will abide, the fruit of righteousness will be peace, and the outcome will be calm security forever. So even though it is so challenging at sometimes to stay in God's righteousness and to work for justice for all people, um, this is where we will find our security and our peace, and that gift that God will give us in the new world, the new heaven and earth when the time comes.
And all of these are seen in the person of Christ himself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Well, Nancy, thank you for sharing with us today.
All right. Well, I did most of the talking. What else do you need to say about this chapter? Anything?
Uh, about this chapter itself, no, I think you summed it up pretty well. I just
Yeah.
would highlight, I guess, verse 15, the until the Spirit from on high is poured out on us. And
Yeah.
you've talked about that again and again so far. But that is just that sense of, again, the coming of what Christ is going to do, and it just brings my attention once again to the fullness of what God did in the beginning, with His presence with them in the garden, the Him breathing into Adam and Eve. This breath is the same word for that as it is for
Mhm.
spirit. So this is the original pouring out of His Spirit upon humanity. And then again, when we get to the book of Revelation, seeing it again, the new creation, and that the Spirit is there, hovering over the waters. The water is flowing forth. That is this life-giving stream from the throne of God, and it brings life to all who are planted near it. So again, what it was at the beginning, was intended to be for us all along, will be again at the end, and again, this is God's intention to you today to pour out His Spirit upon you and into your life. So that's the
Amen.
only thing, again, I would just connect back with. And again, that goes with what you've been saying about being there and walking in the presence of Christ, because it's there that we meet Him.
Yeah. Exactly. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's all I would add, and I wouldn't even say it's really adding that much, just a reiteration of what you've said. But it's good. I think this has been a fruitful conversation.
I do too. That's great. All right. Thank you.
So, folks, this ends us for chapter here 32. We're moving on to chapter 33 next week. We look forward to seeing you then. Bye bye.
All right. Bye. Blessings.